Some films stand the test of time, while others fly completely under the radar, until now. Number 2 on this list is so disturbing it was avoided by theaters for years, while number 9 gave us a satirical masterpiece that's still shockingly relevant today. Carnival of Souls is the kind of psychological horror that gets under your skin. Directed by Herc Harvey, this guerrilla-style indie gem mixes eerie cinematography with an unsettling organ score. Think of it as if Ingmar Bergman and Jean Cocteau teamed up to make a horror movie. Our protagonist, traumatized by the accident, starts fresh in Utah as a church organist, but she can't shake the feeling something's wrong. The answer? A deserted carnival that holds the key to her terrifying reality. This one's a regular at Halloween festivals for a reason. What would you do if you could start over with a brand new identity? Seconds takes that nightmare scenario and runs with it, blending psychological horror with a sci-fi twist. John Randolph plays Arthur, a man who gets the ultimate second chance, a new face, a new life, and a chance to escape his past. But as Arthur steps into his new identity as a Malibu artist, he soon realizes he's made a terrible mistake. Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys famously found the movie so disturbing he avoided theaters for years afterward. Before its time and widely misunderstood, Peeping Tom was seen as scandalous when it was released, and for good reason. This psychological thriller follows Mark Lewis, a filmmaker whose obsession with capturing fear on camera leads him down a dark, twisted path. He doesn't just film women, he murders them and films their final moments of terror. It's a heavy watch, but over time, it's earned a reputation as a cult classic. Today, it's a must-watch in film schools and a prime example of a movie ahead of its time. If you're into schlocky, bizarre horror comedies, Spider Baby is your jam. Directed by Jack Hill, this cult classic follows 3 siblings with a rare condition that makes them mentally regress as they age. These siblings have some dark, dirty secrets they're hiding from the world, and when their relatives come to visit, things spiral out of control. With a low budget and an absurd plot, Spider Baby is the definition of schlock cinema, embracing the kitsch, the weird, and the hilarious all at once. Written by none other than Jack Nicholson and directed by Roger Corman, the trip is exactly what you'd expect from a movie about LSD in the late 60s. It's a psychedelic journey following a man's life-altering experience after he dives headfirst into an acid trip to escape his personal misery. Full of trippy visuals and experimental techniques, the trip captures the psychedelic experience in a way that hadn't been done before, making it a time capsule of a movement and a film that still manages to disorient viewers today. Spirits of the Dead is what happens when you mix Edgar Allan Poe with 3 of Europe's most famous directors. This horror anthology dives into some of Poe's classic stories, and each director brings their own unique twist. You've got Jane Fonda as a murderous countess, Alain Delon battling his own evil twin, and then there's Fellini's Toby Dammit, where a drunken actor loses his grip on reality. Federico Fellini's segment is easily the best of the 3. Critics still rave about it. This anthology is a wild ride, with each director adding their signature style to Poe's dark tales. Black comedy at its finest, The Loved One takes a wickedly satirical look at the funeral industry. Robert Morse plays Dennis Barlow, who stumbles into the world of high-end funerals after his uncle's tragic passing. It's dark, it's outrageous, and with a cast full of 60s Hollywood heavyweights, it's one of those films that pushes boundaries. Audiences didn't know what to make of it at the time, but looking back, it's clear this was ahead of its time, poking fun at a world we weren't quite ready to laugh at. Directed by Peter Bogdanovich, Targets draws inspiration from the tragic 1966 University of Texas shooting. The story follows a Vietnam vet turned killer and a retiring horror movie star, played by the legendary Boris Karloff. These 2 unlikely characters cross paths in a deadly showdown at a drive-in theater. Released just after the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy, Targets wasn't just a thriller, it was a reflection of America's growing violence problem, and sadly, it's still relevant today. Wild in the Streets takes a wild swing at America's political system, turning the counterculture movement into a dystopian nightmare. Christopher Jones plays Max Frost, a rock star who rides the wave of youth rebellion straight into the Senate. The film exaggerates the era's socio-political issues, imagining a world where teens have the power and adults are forced into retirement at 30. It's a bizarre but brilliant satire of pop culture and politics merging, and the result is an unforgettable ride. Forget CGI and jump scares. The Haunting is a masterclass in psychological horror, directed by Robert Wise and based on Shirley Jackson's novel, The Haunting of Hill House. It's about a group of people investigating a spooky old mansion where the paranormal events are far more terrifying than any ghost. The set design, all Rococo extravagance, makes the mansion feel alive, and Wise's use of distorted camera angles and lighting adds an unsettling claustrophobia that never lets up. This film still holds its own as one of the scariest and most stylish horror films of the 60s.